27th of June. It's 2023. And I'm your host tonight, Dana Durnford. Somewhere. We got an amazing show. Right off the bat, we're going to be talking about Tritium. We got some wow stuff for Tritium. My goodness. You can call in at 709-589-4406. 4406. I'm just going to jump right into it. And we got so much. That's wrong. Here we go. Here we go. This was 2013, where MPs were drinking alleged water from the tanks in 2013. And 2014, the Riva, the ELP systems, the Siri systems hadn't worked. So this story here, now we've called it Robert Alvarez on a number of occasions. He still claims Fukushima didn't happen and that Chernobyl is worse than Fukushima. Consider subscribing. If you haven't already, or if you have, check, make sure you're actually still subscribed. We're going to be talking about the death machine tonight. You call it radioactive fallout. We call it evil, radioactive fallout. And the Exploring Tritium Dangers. This was a book. Makhijani had wrote. And tritium is one of the most expensive, rare, and potentially harmful elements. Potentially harmful. Well, the book showed clearly this is unbelievably harmful. Its rarity is underscored by its price, $30,000 a gram. $30,000 a gram. How many grams did you need for a nuclear bomb? I forget. I got a poll. I had to restart the poll because it was showing 0 on all of my screens. And I had a friend was here and they tried to vote and it didn't register. And we had Don Vincent saying his vote didn't register. Hi everybody, hope everybody's doing good. So this is the poll. It says there was 10 votes, but it was showing 0 during the poll. And when we closed the poll, and now Don Vincent says when he voted, it went from 8 down to 7. And a friend of mine was here and voted, and it didn't register. There was no votes. So I rebooted the poll, because that's a great poll. It's an amazing poll. Should tritium-3H, which is man-made, be banned from exercise? When you talk about tritium, they always just call it tritium, but there's actually different tritiums. There's natural, and then there's man-made. Man-made is nasty, as you're about to find out if you're not familiar. And look at the price of this stuff, and they expect the price per gram to go from $100,000 to $200,000 per gram by mid-centuries. And tritium is what they're going to be using in fusion reactors. And it's going to cost about $4.5 billion a year in tritium. At current price is $30,000 a gram. If they did have a fusion reactor up and running, it would cost them about $4.6 billion or something a year just to run the plant on tritium. So be very careful of this fusion industry. They're very naughty people, and they'll poison everything so that they can have an easy job. Tritium is also a radioactive contaminant that has been released widely to the air and water from nuclear plants and spent fuel reprocessing plants. The reprocessing plants have contaminated from La Hague in France and Sellafield, Donorray in the United Kingdom, have completely contaminated the Arctic and Europe. But there's La Hague, the La Hague plant in France has 500 security guards. Makhijani points out that 1 teaspoon of tritiated water, which is Tritium H3, would contaminate 100 billion gallons of water to the U.S. drinking water limit. It's enough to supply 1 million homes with water for a year. Just a teaspoon. So remember that for the numbers that are coming up. 1 teaspoon is enough to poison 1 million people's water for an entire year, or 120 years, depending on how quick they're drinking it. With a half-life of 12 years, a lifetime of 120, tritium falls from the sky and decays, creating a steady state global equilibrium that comes to about 3 to 7 kilograms of tritium. But that's tritium, not tritium-3H. Tritium-3H is man-made. Tritium initially became a widespread man-made contaminant when it was spread across the globe by open-air nuclear weapons explosion. And don't forget, the ones underground, they split the earth open and they hemorrhage radiation into the environment. And one of these, where they had a manhole cover, it blasted it into space at around 250,000 miles per hour or per second or something. Well, per hour, I'm sure. And it's still now traveling deep space. But everything is vented underground into the environment because it cracks the earth open immediately. If you look at the old footage of nuclear explosions underground, they're not underground anymore. Some of them today, are the caverns underground, are still at 400 and 500 degree temperatures. Tritium initially became a widespread man. This is a great story. This is an absolutely vital story to know. Tritium initially became a widespread man-made contaminant when it was spread across the globe by open-air nuclear weapons explosion conducted between 1945 and 63. Rainfall in 1963 found in the northern hemisphere to contain over 1,000 times more tritium, man-made tritium, than natural background levels of tritium, which is not tritium-3H. Open-air nuclear weapons explosions released about 600 kilograms. A teaspoon will poison the water for 1 million people for an entire year. So 600 kilograms is 6 billion curies. 6 billion, so you got to multiply that by 37 billion to get the so-called atoms, the becquerels per second. And it pulses energy for 120 years, almost at the speed of light. When you start adding this stuff up, we're surprised we survived this far because of the radioactive fallout, right? This is extraordinary numbers we're talking about. In the decades since the above-ground testing ended, and don't forget the underground testing, because that's part of the equation. Nuclear power plants added even more, nuclear disease factories added even more to the planet's inventory of tritium. For several years, U.S. power reactors have been contaminating groundwater via large, unexpected tritium leaks from degraded subsurface piping, because it'll leach right through the pipes, and spent nuclear fuel storage pool infrastructures. Well, the spent nuclear fuel storage pools are hemorrhaging all the elements, all the anthropogenic, man-made, deadly isotopes into the environment, because the fuel is still splitting the atoms. We're going to concentrate on tritium, but it's super important that you're aware of that, because we have 1,000 fuel pools worldwide splitting atoms into the environment. They never go away. They pulse energy every second. Every day there's another plume coming out of 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. And when I say plume, that's exactly what I mean. 24 hours a day, Each pool, and there's multiple pools at the top of each reactor building, each pool is boiling off 120,000 liters. Each liter is saturated. And so once it boils off, now it liberates the isotopes into the environment, and they go looking for victims. Anything with a replicating cell is a victim to anthropogenic radioactive fallout. Man-made radiation fallout, I should say. Since the 1990s, 70% of nuclear power sites in the United States, 43 to 61 sites, have had significant tritium leaks. Canada's CANDU reactors are an absolute disaster. They're a disaster. I'll show you that at the end. It's shocking what Canada's reactors are releasing. I've done a 3-hour video on the CANDU reactors quite a while back. Less than 6 months ago or something. It's really something. U.S. power reactors have contaminated the groundwater via large unexpected leaks, which weren't unexpected in the academic world, from degraded subsurface piping and surface nuclear fuel pool infrastructures, because tritium can get through the pipes, no problem. And the most recent leak occurred in November 2022, involving 400,000 gallons of tritium contaminated water from Monticello Nuclear Station in Minnesota. Now, we've covered pretty extensive when it was in the news. They released 400, this is what they're admitting to. They're claiming it's tritium, but there is no tritium pipes at these plants. They had to shut down the plant to repair it, which meant it was a high pressure pipe, which meant it was the reactor core itself. They waited 4 months to tell the public that it could have been 6 or 8 months for all we know, or 4 years. And then they told the public, and at the same time they had a public relation firm ready to go. And they had set up a set up there where you can come in and they would greet you and give you the propaganda narrative, right? What's his face, Clark. The leak was kept from the public for several months, and then they checked for it several months later instead of when the leak happened. They waited 4 months and said, okay, so yeah, we had a leak 4 months ago, and tomorrow we're going to start checking the water to make sure it's safe for you. And everybody said, that's great. But wait, shouldn't you have checked 4 months ago? It's up at the Mississippi River. That's bringing water to millions of homes and thousands of farms. It's disgusting. And there's no such thing as a tritium pipe at a nuclear power plant. In late March of the year, the operators could not stop the leak. Leak! Like, every time I hear the word leak, I really I would prefer to see a nuclear scientist swinging from a rope by the neck in jail. Unfortunately, Canada and Americas don't hang people anymore. We should bring it back. And burn them at the stakes, too. Bring that back while you're at it. Just for the nuclear industry, of course. By this time, tritium reached the groundwater that entered the Mississippi River. A good place to start limiting the negative effects of tritium contamination, Makhijani recommends, is to significantly tighten drinking water standards. That's a great idea. And while we're at it, we'll just ban it from nuclear weapons and exit signs. Do you know how many exit signs just America got? Over 2 million tritium. They got a short shelf life and they fall apart, but the tritium now is released into the environment. And any idea how evil that actually is? And Canada actually has factories that make the signs. So, because Canada's reactors are vicious disease factories. Routine releases of airborne tritium are also not trivial. As part of the well-researched monograph, Makhijani underscores this point by including a detailed atmospheric dispersion study that he commissioned, indicating that tritium, which is not H2O, it's tritium H3, from the Bradwood nuclear power plant in Illinois has been literally raining down from gaseous releases. Literally raining down. It's incorporated with precipitation to form tritium oxide, and when it gets into your body, it's organic tritium, which is nasty. Something that occurs at water-cooled reactors, and don't forget the CANDU reactors. I'll show you that at the end. It's despicable. Spent fuel storage pools are considered the largest sources of gaseous tritium releases. Now, that's interesting that Alvarez would say something like that and not mention that all the other isotopes are coming out because the cores are splitting. And this was the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. And look at all the things they omitted, where they call tritium HTO instead of H3, and that they claim the spent fuel pools are only releasing tritium. The reactors are still splitting atoms that are in the fuel pools, the reactor cores. No containment, so it's releasing. The biggest byproduct is going to be curium isotopes. And curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium isotopes. It's completely dishonest for them not to include that. And there's no way they don't know it. The largely unacknowledged health effects, Makhijani, who wrote the book, makes it clear that the impact of tritium on human health, especially when taken inside the body, warrants much more attention and control than they received until now. And that 39 states and 9 federal agencies are all responsible for regulating tritium. So the non-regulatory agency, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the non-regulatory commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, nice name for monsters, the Department of Energy, nice name for scumbags, and the Occupational Safety and Health Useless Administration, OSHA, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Agriculture are responsible. But there's 39 states and 9 federal agencies. That's the 9 federal agencies. And the very last thing they do is regulate anything nuclear. They don't do it, period. Nothing whatsoever. For 80 years. Literally nothing. The highly scattered regulatory regime has been ineffective at limiting tritium contamination, much less reducing it. For example, state and federal regulators haven't a clue as to how many of the some 2 million exit signs purchased in the United States and made luminous without electric power by tritium have been illegally dumped. 2 million dirty bombs, folks. And they got around 25 Curies in each one. 25 times 37 million. Times 2 million. It's not counting all the other countries, not counting what Canada's up to. Canada has 2 exosign factories, for goodness sakes. One of them at the airport in Ontario, of all places, just ship it right out of the country. That's how they're getting rid of the nuclear waste. They're putting it in your local landfills, your communities. And these exosigns are not going to last 120 years. So that's why we're going to poll, by the way, suggesting we banned tritium-3H, which is the man-made stuff from exosigns and nuclear weapons. I think it's a good idea, personally. 2 million exit signs. State and federal regulators haven't a clue as to how many of the some 2 million exit signs where they were dumped when they are broken open or stomped upon by people who didn't know any better when they're demolishing the buildings. For decades, tritium signs, if you took one of these tritium signs and brought it to your local parliaments or Congress and broke it open, put it down on the ground and jumped on it, they would have to abandon the parliament for 120 years. Do you get it? That's a dirty bomb. Like if you went in and videotaped it and done that, they would make documentaries calling you evil instead of the people that make the signs in the first place. For decades, tritium signs, each initially containing about 25 Curies of radioactivity, which is 25 billion picocuries. There's about 27 picocuries in a becquerel. But it just means your body is under siege from an extra 27 places per becquerel, which makes it insidiously worse, see? Because your body has to repair everything every second for the rest of your life. For decades, and of course you can't do it, for decades, tritium signs, one broken sign is enough to contaminate an entire community landfill. And how many excess signs are in your community? There's a question nobody wants to go to. And so it's safe to say that everybody's landfill is contaminated. They're obsessed with exterminating everybody and every creature on the planet. That's what I'm seeing for the last 20 years when you look at this industry. There are no standards for tritium in the liquids that leaches from the landfills, despite measurements taken in 2009 indicating levels at Pennsylvania landfill thousands of times above background. Pennsylvania, where 3 Mile Island happened. It's pretty convenient to use that particular place and blame it on tritium. Add to this regulatory message the fact that the federal standards limiting tritium in drinking water only apply to public supply and not to private wells. In the past decades, regulators have papered over the tritium-contaminated problem by asserting when tritium leakage, and I hate the word leakage, I think it should be banned from the entire planet, becomes a matter of public concern that the tritium doses humans might receive are too small to be of concern. When I hear stuff like that, I hate scientists a whole lot more each time. It's disgusting they would suggest something like that. Despite growing evidence that tritium-3H is harmful in ways that fall outside the basic framework for radiation protection, agencies like the Non-Regulatory Commission remain frozen in time when it comes to tritium-3H regulations. And they don't mention the word tritium-3H a single time in this story because it's from the Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists. The non-regulatory commissions and other non-regulating agencies are sticking to an outdated premise that tritium is mild, radioactive contaminant that emits weak beta particles that cannot penetrate the outer layer of the skin. And I consider that egregious betrayal when I hear those types of connotations. Water soaks through your skin. When you get a shower, you soak in about 2 liters. And so water also gets in your clothes, ends up in contact with your body and soaks into your body. And for children, it's hideous, by the way. It cannot penetrate the outer layer of the skin by the energy they're talking about, but it actually absorbs into the skin. And so why are we talking about the outer layer when it's airborne, you're breathing it in? It's not like you're going to stick your hand in a bucket of tritium water or something, right? It's airborne. When tritium is taken inside the body, for example, drinking tritiated water, they claim half is quickly excreted within 10 days. I think it's impossible to quantify an assertion like that. The agency points out, and why would you believe these agencies with their 80-year legacy of trying to destroy all of the species on the planet with man-made fallout? And the radiation doses are tiny. Yeah, they're tiny compared to plutonium and curium and uranium. But they're not tiny on their own, right? They will... There's 1,800 diseases, so they want you to think about cancer. Overall, the Non-Regulatory Commission implies its risk of tritium ingestion causing cancer is small. But there's 1,800 diseases and illnesses, not immune deficiencies and injuries. It's not just cancer. And so why don't Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists talk about other illnesses? Why are they just, again, using the cancer? Because that's Alvarez, Bob Alvarez. Bob, what's your name, Bob? I like Bob's name. It's a great name, but in context of Robert Alvarez, Evidence of harms to workers handling tritium is growing. Well, you got to wear all kinds of equipment in the universities to handle tritium. We've covered it. We've got just oodles of studies on tritium. Risk of dying from leukemia among workers at the Savannah River plant following exposure to tritium is more than 8 times greater than exposure to gamma radiation because you release so much of it. That's a crazy statement, right? So it's not just cancer like leukemia. And leukemia is basically because the radiation gets in your body has to attack all the damage and the radiation. The radiation is pulsing energy, and say there's a lot of it in your body. Each spot, its pulsing energy is destroying cells and chromosomes and DNA and everything. Your body has to try to repair that. It's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. And it's going to do that for 120 years. So your body can't keep up with it. And so it's producing white blood cells to repair everything because everything is being damaged. And that displaces, for every white blood cell, you're displacing your red blood cells. So that's called leukemia. And you can have it in less than a week if you're eating Japanese food, by the way. Over the past several years, studies of workers exposed to tritium consistently showed significant excess levels of chromosome damage. So, there is a cause and effect, but as soon as it gets in your body attacks it for the rest of your life every second with white blood cells. So when you get a cut on your finger, it'll do it for a week, and it'll fix it, and then the white blood cell counts will drop off, and the red blood cell counts will come back up, right? But with radiation, your red blood cells always go lower and never come back up because it's pulsing energy at the speed of light in your body, or the birds or insects or animals or mammals or children or the elderly. It's disgusting. Nuclear is the most disgusting thing in history. And the people in the industry are vicious scum. They're literally vicious, degenerate scum. The best way to describe it is a bunch of maniacs. Just kidding, man. Come on, man. I know. This is what tritium's like in real time, look. The contention that tritium is mildly radioactive does not hold when it is taken in the body's tritiated water, the dominant means for exposure. The Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board advises the U.S. Department of Energy about the safety at the national defense sites, informed the Secretary of Energy in 2019 that tritiated water vapors represent a significant risk to those exposed to it, as those consequences to an exposed individual is 15,000 to 20,000 times higher than that of the equivalent amount of tritium gas. The water vapors are a much more vicious way to poison the population. And the CANDU reactors, obviously, I can't see anybody anymore. Where you toe? Get all these dead bodies out of the way. As it decays, tritium emits nearly 400 trillion energetic disintegrations per second. UCLA Medical School describes these disintegrations as explosive packages of energy. They're like little nuclear bombs exploding in every direction, almost at the speed of light. Try imagining how much energy does it take to make something travel almost at the speed of light every second for 120 years. And you're on the right path to understanding why this is so nasty. It's highly efficient at forming complex, potentially lethal DNA double-strand breaks. And if you're a developing fetus, you're in real trouble with tritium. I gotta wait for the dead bodies to fall from the tritium. Think of these dead bodies you're seeing as the victims in real time worldwide. When he stated that the damage to the DNA can occur within minutes to hours. And so your body has to flood itself with white blood cells to try to repair everything, and it can't keep up with it because it explodes at the speed of light almost every second. No matter how it is taken into the body, a fact sheet from the Energy Department, Argonne National Laboratory says tritium is uniformly distributed through all biological fluids within 1 or 2 hours. So it's symmetrically distributed through your entire body within 1 or 2 hours, folks. That's how effective this actual monster really actually is. That's a stunning revelation, isn't it? During that short time, the Defense Facilities Safety Board points out that the combination of a rapid intake and a short biological half-life means a large fraction of radiological dose is acutely delivered within hours to days. While the so-called biological half-life, how do I explain this? It's dishonest to say what they're saying. Let's put it that way. Like, your body is 90% water, so how are you going to excrete the tritium that quick, right? It's ridiculous because it's absorbed through the water. It's the perfect genocide machine. A new approach, imagine the vulnerability of insects and birds, mammals, and animals, right? A new approach to tritium regulation. The author pulled together impressive evidence, clearly pointing to the need of innovative approach that addresses, in addition to cancer, a range of outcomes that can follow tritium exposure, including prenatal and various forms of genomic damage. Prenatal is hugely important because it happens in such a short period of time. The principal that's what we're talking about, 1800 diseases. And, congenital malformation covers a lot of it. The principal constant value holding dose reconstructions, regulatory compliance together is the reliance on the reference man. This is a fictional, healthy, Caucasian male, and they usually describe him as around 25 years old, who exist only in the abstract world. A perfectly healthy male is what it's based upon. There probably is no more perfectly healthy males left on the planet, or females, because of just the weapons test, let alone major events and dumping and everything else. Use of the reference man standard gives rise to the obvious and major question: what radiation dose limit is necessary to protect the reference man from serious damage? And what about the protection of more vulnerable forms of human lives? What about the birds and insects, mammals and animals, and the unknown creatures, the fungus, the bacteria, which life can't even exist? According to the 2006 study by the National Research Council, the healthy Caucasian man between 20 and 30 are about 1/10 as likely to contract a radiation-induced cancer as a child exposed to the same external dose of gamma radiation while in the womb. And, again, suggesting that cancer is the only thing that's going to manifest is completely and criminally dishonest. The author underscores the need to protect the fetus and embryo from internal exposures to tritium, and in particular I'll add the females of all species. A need largely being sidestepped by radiation protection authorities. Well, we covered a story last night. To be an authority, it's like a 7-week course or something. It's like a relevant course because they run through these people so quick. Tritium replaces non-radioactive hydrogen in water. And the principal source of the tritium exposure, the author wrote, points to unassailable evidence that the tritium easily can cross the placenta and irradiate the developing fetus, thereby raising the risk of birth defects, miscarriages, and other problems like autism and Down syndrome, schizophrenia, heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, and as they get older, Alzheimer's and dementia. And he's not alone in such an assessment. According to a 2022 medical expert consensus report on radiation protection for healthcare professionals in Europe, the greatest risk of pregnancy loss from radiation exposure is during the first 2 weeks of pregnancy. Wow. Holy shit, eh? And so how much more vulnerable are the species? While developing 2 to 8 weeks after conception, the embryo is most susceptible to the development of congenital malformations, because this is the principle or the period of organogenesis. In the United States, the non-regulatory commission's effort to reduce the exposure limits and protect pregnant women and their fetuses is best described as foot dragging. By comparison, the required limit for a pregnant worker in Europe to be reassigned from further exposure is 150 U.S. standards and was adopted nearly 20 years ago. Yeah, well, nuclear industry runs America and captured Canada is in the 40s, if not completely altogether in the 50s for sure at the latest. Long-term environmental retention. All of this is frightening. A 2019 study put forward the first ever, and this is the lowest emitter in the range of radionuclides, so how bad is everything else? The 2019 study put forward for the first ever empirical evidence and very long-term environmental retention of organically bound tritium in an entire river system. And the entire river, deposited by fallout from atmospheric nuclear weapons explosion, was still there today in 2019, folks. And the entire river system, organically bound tritium, which is nasty. And so using the word organically is where it's bound to nature, right? But it's still deadly. But it's even more deadly because it's more easier to absorb into your body. Because water, you sweat and you urinate, right? So you get a little bit of it. But when it's organically bound, it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. In relation to the environment, tritium atoms can replace hydrogen atoms in organic molecules to form organically bound tritium, which is found soil and river sediments, vegetation, and wide varieties of food, the endless variety. It's been more than a half a century since the ratifications of the Limited Test Ban Treaty. And they said to put it underground, but the ground is always ripped open and is vented into the environment. Release through the nuclear weapons testing has undergone significant decay. And Alvarez knows everything I'm telling you, by the way. Yet because of the long retention of the organically bound tritium in greater than expected concentrations, it still remains a contaminant of concerns all these decades after the nuclear weapons testing. Despite its 12.3-year half-life, a much larger amount of organically bound tritium for nuclear test than previously assumed is locked up in the Arctic permafrost. And because in cold countries where tritiated water is being released, it turns into snow. Disgusting industry. What a despicable industry. Raising concern about widespread contamination as global warming, which is radioactive fallout, melts the Arctic. And the Arctic is contaminated also from the hideous emissions from France and United Kingdom. Organically bound tritium can reside in the body far longer than tritiated water, to consequently greater negative effects. So the author done a really great job. Wow. Nuclear weapons, nuclear power, and tritium. The tritium problem has several dimensions, can relate directly to the world's current and future efforts via nuclear weapons and nuclear power. Not that nuclear power reactors are closing down, especially in the aftermath of the Fukushima accident. That's an interesting statement, isn't it? The disposal of large volumes of contaminated water into the lakes, the rivers, the oceans, becoming a source of growing concern around the world. 80 years of these monsters destroying everything. The Japanese government approved a dumping of about 230 million gallons of radioactive water. This is where the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists is claiming now that only tritium is coming out of Fukushima and never came out, but in the future will. And they used a guy who's really good, and they muddled his story in order to denigrate the facts. So Alvarez and the Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists are claiming that nothing got out of these destroyed buildings, folks. And don't forget how it's not just tritium where they're getting after you and the children. Chemotherapy harms the fertility of female cancer patients' grandchildren, too. So, the same thing with the tritium. So Japan's going to dump 230 million gallons of radioactive water. It's hard to wrap your mind around 230 million gallons of radioactive water. First off, the tanks are empty. Now they're claiming there's 1,300 tanks now. Now we done a poll last night. Should Japan show a picture of the 1,000 tanks? And today, 2 new pictures came out that I've never seen before. And we'll get to that. And the pictures are so blurry, you can't count a single tank. They're faraway shots, but they're useless. Stored in some 1,300 large tanks. That's the first time we've heard that. We cover this every single day, 5 days a week, rather. Week after week, month after month, year after year after year after year after year after year after year. That's the first time I heard 1,300 tanks. Then there's the matter of boosting the efficiency, destruction power of nuclear weapons with tritium gas. A use that has dominated demand for this isotope because 5% of the tritium in thermonuclear warheads decay each year and has to be periodically replenished, and over the past 70 years, an estimated 225 kilograms of tritium were produced in the U.S. government's reactors, principally at the Savannah River Disease Factory in South Carolina. These national laboratories are just insidiously evil places. Most of them are built on the biggest aquifers in that part of the country. In case they have a meltdown, it goes into the aquifer, which poisons tens of thousands of farms downstream and every community and the air. You can't have a future in the nuclear industry at the same time, folks. You just can't. There is no future as long as this industry exists. It's going to be really difficult to get rid of them. And they're so firmly entrenched in all facets of your universities and your medias and your governments. We might have to destroy the planet to save the planet. Those reactors were shuttered in 1988, and since 2003, the tritium supplies for the U.S. nuclear warheads were provided by the Tennessee Valley Authority nuclear disease factories. And the radiation of lithium target elements in the reactors has fallen short of meeting demands because of excess tritium leakage into the reactor coolant. The problem with tritium is it can leak right through pipes. And the Canadian reactors is a hideous example of that. The hazards of tritium production for weapons are far from trivial. For instance, and the tritium in a nuclear weapon will make the nuclear bomb 2, 3, 10, 15 times, 100 times more powerful, depending on how much you add to it. So how can it have that kind of effect and yet be harmless at the same time? Because that's what the industry wants you to believe. It's something to think about how evil they actually are for the last 80 years and their intentions for the next 80. Is evil in overdrive. They're gone into overdrive evil now since Fukushima. They're literally gone evil on a whole different level since Fukushima meltdowns. For instance, since June 2019, Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board, that's laughable, has taken the Energy Department to task for its failure to address the risk of severe fires involving tritium processing and storage facilities at the Savannah River Disease Factory. According to the board, such a fire may have a 40% chance of occurring during 50 years of operation, could result in potentially lethal worker doses greater than 6,000 rems. Why are we talking rems? Well, the Beck will never change, but the rems have. And the Sieverts have, and many different other ones. It's meant to confuse and hide the crimes that they've already committed. 1,200 times the annual occupational exposure limits. 1,200 times. Well, 6,000 rems is an instant lethal dose. You walk past that, that's a lethal dose immediately. Doses to the public would not be inconsequential. Just a single atom can make you sick for the rest of your life in increments over decades. The Energy Department is under pressure from the nuclear disease factory weapons establishment to step up demand for tritium. Unless there's a marked increase in planned production of tritium in the next few years, the 2018 U.S. Nuclear Posture Review concluded our nuclear capabilities will disappear. Energy Department estimated it will take 15 to 20 years to achieve a major multi-billion-dollar overhaul of its tritium production infrastructure. Well, all they really got to do is build a CANDU reactor. It'll have all the tritium they ever wanted. It's just capturing it and converting it for weapons, which you can't use, but you end up polluting the entire planet and killing it all. So just want to have a nuclear war and get it over with. Meanwhile, the quest for fusion energy highlights a startling fact. The amount of tritium required to fuel a single fusion reactor, should an economic fusion-based power plant ever be created, which is unlikely, will likely be far greater than the amount produced by all fission reactors and open bomb tests since the 1940s. A full-scale 3,000 megawatt electric fusion reactor, 3 gigawatt, is estimated to burn about 150 kilograms of tritium a year. Each year, would work out to 4.5 billion a year for fuel to provide 3 gigawatts. And they can't contain it. And they produce tritium on their own, right? And they can't contain it. Yeah, we're in real trouble. Let's try to check it on the poll. Looks like we got censored big time. Should tritium-3H be banned from exercise and nuclear weapons? We had to repost the poll because the first poll wasn't registering it. Wasn't registering any of my screens, and a friend's cell phone wasn't registering. And when I ended the first poll and restarted the second one, it showed up as 10 votes, despite the fact it said 0 when I done it. Because it's easy to do, right? It's digital. It's like typing a letter on your computer and then taking a word out. That's how easy it is to censor me on YouTube. It's the same thing. It's just total digital, right? An annual loss to the environment from a single fusion reactor could dwarf the release of tritium from all nuclear facilities that currently dot the global landscape. And that's an understatement again. Evidence is mounting not just in regards to increased health risk from the tritium-contaminated water from organically bound tritium, but also as related to the human tritium can visit on the unborn. At the same time, it's become clear that the regulations in tritium in the United States is grossly insufficient to the current risk from tritium contamination, not to mention further risk that could arise if tritium production used and associated leakage arises. Arjun Makhijani, that's the author. I butchered his name, so I'm just going to call him the author. But you can see the author's name. Let me get right on the name just in case you're using a small screen so you can't mistake it later, right? And if you want to look up and read his book, I'd suggest that's a great idea. I'll definitely be ordering in the book. That's an incredible, and you got to realize the Union of Unconcerned Scientists are going to pick and choose, and they only acknowledge cancer. They refuse to acknowledge that Fukushima's reactors are destroyed, and they refuse to acknowledge the massive plumes have already come out of Fukushima. And that's their legacy, right? I generally won't have anything to do with them. Man, how much stuff have I got at all? I'm really happy that my system is able to handle this workload that we give it. This is, it's hard to comprehend how big the workload is for me to be able to do my shows 5 days a week. It's, for the average person, it's, for just about anybody, it's probably impossible to really appreciate the enormity of the amount of work that I put in for each of these shows. And just to get the show ready each day. I'm not bragging or something, I'm just stating a fact. And today, like yesterday, I had I got so many projects, at least 25 projects going at one time, and we got to get them done, right? That's got to do with this operation. And I just ran into the ground trying to keep up with it. And I can only do so many things a day, right? So you got to just, it feels great though, doing things again, because after the surgery now I can finally do stuff. And my recovery rate is really good. So I'll get out of breath, but I recover pretty quick. Whereas before, that would be the end of me pretty quick. At the same time, it has become clear that the regulations of tritium in the United States is grossly insufficient to the current risk for tritium contamination, not to mention future risks that could arise if tritium production, use, and associated leakages arise. Well, there's already massive leakages because you can't contain it. And the fuel pools are hemorrhaging uranium, plutonium, curium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and you name it, all day long into your environment. Most of these places are surrounded by farms. The dangerous, pernicious contaminant will pose in the future, absent more effective regulation, includes lower limits for human tritium. Well, if you lower the limits for human tritium exposures, they have to close down all the nuclear power plants worldwide. And to just drive this horror, this absolute horror story home, here's the numbers at the top for Canadian reactors in the trillions releases and Becquerels. And in the bottom, you can see what other countries are doing. So United Kingdom, Sizewell, releasing 8 trillion of the tritium 3H a year. Canada's New Brunswick, Point Leper in New Brunswick in the Atlantic, is 16,400,000 trillion becquerels. It's more radiation from that single reactor in tritium than all reactors in Europe combined. Than all reactors in Europe combined. Am I doing dismal on the poll tonight? How far are we along here? So the Canadian reactors, the CANDU reactors, this is hideous stuff. This is unbelievably, monstrously hideous numbers we're talking about. And the Canadian reactors are going into fresh water, one of the biggest aquifers in North America. This feeds millions and millions and millions of people. And the intake water for Toronto, with several million people, is right alongside of the water discharges from Darlington, Bruce, and Pickering nuclear plants. And look at the numbers they're releasing. These are hideous numbers. When you compare it to the Netherlands at 30 trillion terabecquerels a year, and Germany at 70 trillion, they're closed down now finally, and Belgium, even scumbag France. Now, I don't believe France's number at all. Emergency drills planned at Monticello Nuclear Disease Factory on Tuesday. They've murdered so many people with their releases. What they released, they had a major release. And so 4 months later they said, oh, by the way, we had a release 4 months ago. And people were upset. Well, maybe next time we'll tell you sooner is what they said in that response. They had a massive event. They decided to wait till the Mississippi River flushed it towards the Atlantic before they told the population. And then 4 months later, when it's already gone, then they tested the water. These are just, I'd spit in any of their faces in a heartbeat. These are despicable scum. Being overseen by the United States Department of Homeland Security. Like the people for the Homeland Security, they found them, hired them, with advertisement on pizza boxes and coffee cups. What's in store for David Bessie as the federal investigation wraps up? What federal investigation? I've never seen an investigation that meant anything from the nuclear industry, period. 30 years of North Korea's nuclear threat. Like, just stop right there, okay? North Korea was dominated by Japan for over 50 years, pre-Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Then they left. Then the United Nations went in and bombed them into non-existence with more bombs than used in the entire World War I. Not only that, they napalmed every community, every village, which is collective punishment. So for over 120 years total, the country's never attacked anybody. They defended themselves against South Korea, basically, when they were finally free after 50 years of being a dictator from Japan. And then the League of Nations changed their name to United Nations and went in and bombed them into non-existence as their first act. And now for 70 years, they has ostracized them so that they live worse than a third world country. And then used them as a boogeyman that they were somehow magically going to attack everybody if they didn't keep it up. And they're still doing it today, and they're probably intending to do it forever. They got to have a boogeyman. And they don't care if the entire country is destroyed. Look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at Afghanistan. It's the same people. Of course they were extracting plutonium. If you were North Korea, you'd be extracting plutonium too. A supervolcano on the verge of eruption could spark a mass extinction and a nuclear winter in Italy. This is the first time it's been active since 1538. 1538. And this is a video from USGS, so hopefully they don't frig with me. I had to restart the video so you'll see that pop up. It'll pop up again in a second. That's the first time it's been active. Now, there's been over 600 earthquakes in April alone. This has been dormant since 1538. Over 400 years, this thing, now it's very active with over 600 earthquakes. And if this blows, this is going to push the plume right up into the stratosphere, apparently. It's 14 miles wide, folks. 14 miles wide. Or kilometers wide. 12 to 14 kilometers across, that's right. It's the first time since 1538 that it's been active. So that's one to keep your eyes on. A secret mission to dump radioactive cargo in the Atlantic Ocean tells the history of more nuclear tests. They jumped 29,045-gallon drums from airplanes into the Atlantic in the dark. Man, the nuclear industry, it hates life. All it does is destroy all species. It's the things that it done, there's no way they didn't know what they're doing. That's why they dumped it at night in the ocean, because they knew what they were doing. Answers to a decade-long mystery uncovered in archives of the Science History Institute in Philadelphia. What a shit job that one is. Dead man tells no tales, I suppose. He first was trying to figure out what was going on. He's seen this helicopter hovering with a Geiger counter over clusters of 55-gallon canisters. And he wasn't a scientist. He assumed the instrument was a Geiger counter, but he knew the Geiger counter measured radiation. But eventually they hovered over him with the Geiger counter. They took one by one, they took the 55-gallon drums into a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. And it was Earl's job to fly the plane low and slow, so not disturb the canister, late into the night, 100 miles southeast of Atlantic City, folks. It's horrifying. And they done that time after time after time. The crew then out over the dark ocean in the nighttime, the plane's crew would open a hatch and tip the canisters into the sea. He flew 3 secret missions that month. Each time the same way. The men never revealed to Earl what he was hoping getting rid of. It was all very hush-hush, Earl later said in a local news report. And let me see. I think it was 29,000. Yeah, 29,000 of these containers. Well, leaks had occurred, none proved majorly harmful. Every time I heard the word leak, I just want to kick the shit out of somebody in the nuclear industry. None proved majorly harmful. Well, when you dump these into the ocean from high up in the sky, they're going to smash open. If they don't smash open, when they get down a couple of 100 feet, they're going to be like that submarine. Because there's 14.5 pounds for every 33 feet underwater. So trying to get down a couple of 100 feet, they just crush and the lids come off and the radiation is poured into the ocean. And the off that coastline was supposed to be a fertile fishing grounds, right? Judge dismisses Sizewell C nuclear plant legal challenge, folks. And so there's a group of great people down there that have harassed the shit out of Sizewell C, nuclear disease factory. And we're really grateful for those folks for doing that. They lost it, but that don't mean they haven't caused all kinds of problems. Just because that judge threw it, don't mean it's going to the protesters and the organizations are not going to be given up yet. He said, without mirror. Of course it had mirrored. High price, let's go back into 2017 with the ice wall. Why would you build an ice wall, by the way? Morons. High-priced Fukushima ice wall nears completion, but effectiveness was doubtful. Now we know it didn't work. So they said they hired 260,000 people to build an ice wall. 260,000 people. That doesn't work. Now, if you gave them $1,143 each, there was no money left over to build the ice wall. There's zero possibility. In fact, I've never seen a single interview with somebody that built the ice wall. Yet 260,000 people worked on. Why not build a real wall? Because the TEPCO would have to pay for it. But if you build an experimental ice wall, taxpayers paid for it. There's no roof on it. There's no bottom in it. You can't stop the water from getting in when there's a typhoons or when it rains or when it snows. So if everything is in the tank, how come infants' thyroid doses, according to the degenerate World Health Organization, in Tokyo and Osaka, 600 kilometers away, thyroid doses of 10 to 100 millisieverts, which is 100,000 microsieverts, and up to a full sievert in NAMI. How can NAMI get a bigger dose? Or NAMI's right alongside of us, sorry. I was thinking Osaka. A full sievert in NAMI, and they waited quite a long time for the evacuated NAMI because being scumbags comes natural to this industry. 2 sieverts an hour of beta radiation emitted from a single liter of leaked water. So if you took 5 gallons of it in a gas can and put it at a subway station or an airport, everybody who walks past it will die that day or that week for 1,000,000 years. The industry's scum, and you can't filter this. And they're only acknowledging beta, by the way, and you can't filter that. The filter now is just thousands of sieverts. You can't even get back. You can't even get within the eyesight of the building without getting gamma shines and neutron bombardments that'll kill you with those kind of doses. And we've seen the filters they're using. They're not 6-10 foot thick lead or anything. So there's no way to protect you. Not only that, see the problem with the filter, and I forget to bring this up a lot of times. The problem with the filter is you can't separate gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas in a system that they're talking about. And what that means, though, is that the filter is going to have a criticality because you're putting all of it together. So that's a criticality, see? And you know what that means? That's a meltdown with the filter. So you can't even filter it. Can't filter it. And the tanks, because the filters nothing was working by 2014, which meant any water they were sucking up was supposed to be from test wells. Right? It's a total fable that all the water they're spraying on the reactors are now being sucked up and put into the tanks because you couldn't step over the hoses for starters. And the list goes on. And I got playlists on the tanks if you're interested. And I'll give you all the details what I talked about with the documentation. So there's no way to misinterpret anything that I'm saying. Nuclear scientists, Fukushima is an apocalyptic disaster. The world is an experimental lab with humans as guinea pigs. Does that sound like it's all in the tanks to you? Fukushima is a global threat to the human health. Radioactivity in the food web of the Pacific Northwest has significantly increased after 1 year. Salmon forecast to exceed Japan's radiation limits. Major concern for public health and coastal communities. Does it sound like it's in the tanks to you? Because the official story now is nothing got out, and over the next 30 years, they'll release 2.2 grams of tritium. I'm sick of this industry. This industry needs to be wiped out before they wipe you out. Half of Japan to be covered in nuclear waste. 60 and older should be prepared to die at Fukushima. Fire out of control at number 4 reactors. Does it sound like it's in the tanks to anybody? Does reactor 3 explosion look like everything is in the tanks to you? Send us people who don't mind dying. Does it sound like it's in the tanks? They picked up 30 million one-ton bags, so it's not in the tanks, okay? Tokyo Vice Governor suggested a Fukushima draft. Every organism in Fukushima prefecture, which is 6,000 square miles, is contaminated with radiation. 1.4 million becquerels a kilogram in worms' excrements, 60 kilometers from the meltdown. So therefore, it can't be in the tanks. And it's bizarre that we're seeing this story for the last 2 weeks where they're claiming nothing got out and only 2.2 grams will be released over the next 30 years. And the whole world is out protesting tritium as we speak, because they bought into the propaganda and lies by the betrayal of the media and the universities. Kyoto News uses terms hot zones, describe Miyagi, Iwate, Tochigi prefectures, not just Fukushima. So how can it be in the tanks if you got all of them hot zones? How can it be in the tanks if you're abandoning all these supermarkets? And if they have another earthquake and reactor 4 fuel pool collapse, which did, of course, the resulting destruction will take half the planet with it. Well, it took more than half the planet, whereas the die-offs are worldwide. I get a little upset with genocides. I'm funny like that. Bear with me. Can't even find any pictures tonight because I'm going an unconventional route, see? Therefore, I must pay this price. Shh. Let me put this in there. The food is banned in 14 prefectures by 55 countries for a decade. Not just Fukushima. So it's not in the tanks. And we counted the tanks, by the way. And last night we had a poll. Should they show a picture of the 1,000 tanks after 12 years? Isn't it time we got a picture of it? Because I can only find 750. And the guy in charge of the victims in Fukushima was quoted as saying, "Let the elderly people hurry up and die." So why is Japan going to drastically reduce the allowable levels of radiation in food at the end of, which they done in 2012, I'll add, if nothing got out? And if 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium, you start to see heart problems, and food is going to be at 100 becquerels per kilogram, what do you think is going to happen to the children? And the last one in this set. There's 1 million becquerels a kilogram of cesium at the school after decontamination. So it's pretty hard to suggest that it's in the tanks when the evidence undeniably clearly shows it's not in the tanks, right? Oh, we can't see Kevin's comments? What's up with that? I don't see Kevin's comments. So John sees Kevin's comments, but I don't see him? Is this what's happening? What the hell? Let me look again. Because that's crazy stuff. I don't see Kevin Blanch's comments. That can't be true, is it? My goodness. Let me go all the way up. I don't see anything. Kevin. Is that what's going on, John? I seen your comment there. Yeah, I don't see it. Let's bring it up on the screen. Yeah, my chat is censored. I don't see Kevin Blanch's comments at all. Just have a look. I'll scroll up. I do not see Kevin Blanch's comments, folks. You guys seen Kevin's comments? What the hell, man? How's that even possible? That is scary shit, man. I do not see Kevin's comments, folks. They're not there. Look at that. Wow. I don't see Kevin, folks. What the hell, eh? Let me go to Kevin's site and check. See if the industry got something. Just give me a second here. I'll bring it up on the screen. We can do it in real time. That's my videos. We don't want that. Let's go this way. So we'll put in Kevin. Kevin Blanch. There he is, Kevin Blanch. We'll go to Kevin's site.
I'll be calling you a radical.
Awesome. And we'll go to his about. And we'll look at the flag. And so he's not blocked or something. Not that I would block Kevin, of course. But he's not blocked or something, right? They didn't like come into my account and block him. And so why isn't these comments showing up on my site? That freaks me out. How many other people are you doing that to, I wonder? And I've had a lot of people tell me weird, they're being unsubscribed, or their votes don't show up, and the list goes on and on. Yeah, I'll give Kevin a call. That's a great idea, actually. Thank you. Why didn't I think of that? Well, I wanted to see if they were frigging with my account first, right? Let's find Kevin, give him a shout. Maybe Kevin give us some updates too while he's at it. Kevin B, here we go. Pick up the phone, Kevin. If you're out there.
Hello.
Hi, Kevin. Are you busy?
No. Well, I'm here at the baseball game. Let's shoot.
What, are you busy right now? You're not?
No, hell no. I can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Were you leaving comments? Because I don't see them.
What's that?
Were you in my chat room?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing you, man.
Really?
And I checked your site, and they didn't screw with my account in your site, and so I can't comprehend why you're not showing up in my comments section.
Oh, I can. They got me so internet kettled you don't even want to know.
That's crazy, Kevin, man. I'm so, like, man,
chicken shit.
That freaks me out.
Well,
so listen, if you're
that's what, go ahead.
Just call. If you're having problems, you just call the show instead, okay?
Okay.
Don't be shy, man, because we can't have them doing that to you, right?
Yeah.
That's craziness.
Well, So we got a real epic, radical, acute catastrophe going on in the Central Coast of Southern California the last 3 days.
What is it?
It's just happening right now.
What's going on?
It started. So they're blaming it on algae bloom, of course. So, which the demonic acid is caused by algae, which the real name is called pseudo-nuts. Pseudo-nuts pseudo is Latin for not genuine, fake. So what's happening, and they got it right, because the demonic acid is starting, because it's the shellfish disease.
Right.
It gets into the shellfish. It's getting into the dolphins' brains and into the sea lions' brains the last 3 days.
And the manatees. They're trying to blame the manatees for it.
Yeah,
no,
on the Pacific.
Right,
Pacific.
I've been gathering that one up because they tried to blame the die-off of the birds in Alaska for quite a few years on domoic acid, but then it came out that all the tests were false or negative for domoic acid. But they tried to blame them for years. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Even if they're right, demonic acid, in 2014-15, when I was walking the coast and all that work, it ended up being leukemia, which, we could tie the so-called contagious leukemia, which gets through shellfish, blah, 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 blah. But the bottom line is this, and I don't think anybody knows, I have a really strong biology background. I've got, a biology degree from the top university when I was back from good professors. The thing that people don't realize, and they need to get into their head, the demonic acid or the pseudo only can enter an ecosystem when the healthy photoplankton, zooplankton,
Or
the staff of
exterminated.
life is missing.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the foundation is the invasive species is what I call it. I've always learned it's called the invasive species. You can have lots of words for it. I call it just scum, but now we have to call the nuclear industry scum, and the fake biologists are the scum. So mold, scum, pseudo, which causes, whether you call it demonic acid, contagious leukemia, shellfish, it only moves in when the photoplankton and the healthy luminescence is missing. It can't move in. When the ocean is healthy and it has the healthy plankton will kick its ass every time.
Right.
There's no chance.
Hey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that's real obvious. I mean, what happened? We've been saying, Fukushima killed the plankton.
Yeah.
They took out the freaking staff. It took the common denominator, the staff of life. Once you take it out, of course the invasive species is going to move in. When I'm in the tide pools doing my work, you can look down and see it. It looks black and moldy and it's gross.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the green algae, that's not natural. It's pond scum. It's the lowest form. And so it's taking over the ocean, and it's getting to these animals. It's the same thing because I have leukemia. And your listeners can look this up. The most famous leukemia case in the last probably 50 years in this country, his name's Marshall Jensen. He was in the room next to me. We were both fighting cancer. I was friends with him. And there was a new treatment, which was HIV injection. Because HIV, remember when AIDS happened and they were calling it contagious cancer, contagious leukemia? Right. Leukemia, AML, the genome mirrors and matches HIV.
Wow.
Is the same, it's the exact same thing as the shellfish leukemia. People have always been scared, is this going to go mutate into animals, into people? It's happening. So what's happening in California the last few days, whatever's mutating from shellfish or fish or the mold or the pond scum is getting into the dolphins, getting into the fish. It's getting into them, and it's killing them. And this has never happened before. I mean, we've had events of it, not like this. There are literally thousands of mammals washed up in the last 48 hours, all the way from San Francisco to San Diego. I mean, thousands. And, they don't just wash up dead. you know, they've got demonic acid in their bodies and or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're suffering hard. It's wicked, horrible, ugly death. This has never happened before. And I'm telling you, it gives me the creeps like, you know, COVID. You know, COVID, people forget they declared that, you know, they declared the pandemic, the World Health Organization, on March 11th. Do you think that's coincidence? That's a real. Look it up. Google. The World Health
No, I
Organization
remember
declared-
that. You're right. Yeah, I forgot that. Thank you.
And you know, my thesis, I always believed that fucking COVID was a mutation from fucking Fukushima. Einstein said that it would happen. Einstein said you let this out of the box, it's going to change every piece. It's going to cause pandemics. It's going to mutate viruses. He did a whole big thesis on viruses mutating from if we ever get a nuclear meltdown. Well, this is the first time we've ever had major nuclear meltdowns. And
No,
so
lots of them. Yeah.
it got an official. I put up lots of videos saying that, and I get in trouble because, I mean, I guess Google knows everything. They don't know shit, by the way. So this is, mark my words, Daniel, this is happening in Southern California. I might fly down there tomorrow. I put the money together. My doctor will let me.
Hey,
This is
James,
it's an epic event.
James Lucas said he just sent you a PayPal.
Oh, nice. Thanks, James. Appreciate you, man. So this is unfolding. This is breaking now, and I'm telling you, over the next few days, you're going to hear this go crazy. Because I'm talking to people down there. I talked to the Honorary Aquarium, my friends they're the volunteers there, the old lady.
Yeah, that's great. I'm
talked to
glad
her
you're
today
going
on the
down,
phone.
Kevin. Fantastic. And
maybe.
Kevin, where
We'll
can
see.
people donate? At your
Just my PayPal or my GoFundMe. There are links on my page, on my front page of my YouTube site or my videos. You can find them if you look.
yeah, I just wanted you to
No.
let everybody know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so mark my words, Dana, over the next thing. And it's only a matter of time. You know, I know it's been 12 years, been a long, ugly battle, and we both almost died. You know, it's been hardcore. But we're going to get a break. Somebody inside is going to break ranks and say, wait a minute. This cover-up's not going to last forever. And we're going to get a break inside. Somebody inside is going to say, hey, look what they did to these guys. They're telling the truth the whole time, and somebody's going to break ranks and use the F word. So,
Yeah, we put in the time, right?
it's just 12 years.
It's ridiculous.
Shoot every day.
It's been nasty, man. It's been nasty.
It'll be 12 years since I got cancer here soon.
Yeah. Was
Holy shit, I can't even believe it's been this long of a fight.
like
And we
when
still get no attention.
I talk
Yeah,
about
no.
this, I describe it as a war. We're at war, right?
Back to back home run.
Yeah.
I'm at the baseball game.
Okay. Hey,
So
if you're
Dave,
comment
touch me with me on this.
if you're commenting for and it's not showing up, phone the show, man. Just phone into the
I
show.
will.
Okay,
All
buddy.
right, right on, Dana. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good
Matt.
stuff. Thank you, Kevin. Great night, man. That was Kevin Blanche. And Kevin is at the ball game with the kids, and he's going to head down. He said to California where the die-off is happening. If he raises enough money, you can donate on the front of his page. Let me get rid of that there. You can donate on the front of his page, or under his videos should be links to PayPal and the other site that he's using for donations. And if you can get down there why it's happening, that's a big deal, see? And get actual footage, because these animals could be emaciated for all we know, right? And so I'm just absolutely shocked that his comments are not showing up. I'm just shocked. That shocked me, man. My goodness. Well, I'm glad we done that. That's great. My brain was kind of stopped there for a second, but I never thought about calling him until James mentioned it. Fukushima began shipping peaches earlier than usual, so they're going to poison people sooner than later. Is there a buffering problem, folks? Because I did see my chat kind of disconnect a little while ago. And We got dismal votes in the night. We got dismal thumbs up so far tonight. That's a great poll, right? Should tritium 3H be banned from exercise and nuclear weapons and anywhere else where they're sticking that in the public? And should we ban americium-241 from our smoke detectors? I think that'll be the poll tomorrow night. Woo! Okay, let's try to get in as many as we can in the last part of the show here. So, I got headlines to danger Fukushima shipping peaches from way back in the day, right? Don't eat, like the rule of thumb is you don't eat anything from Japan, period. The whole country's contaminated. Workers at Agricultural Cooperative in Fukushima City, Unclear done a study in the first year, and 296,000 people were living in 229,000 becquerels a square meter. And they're only acknowledged in cesium-137, and I despised him for doing something like that, only acknowledged in cesium-137. It's evil on a whole different scale that this industry, the only way it survives is its entire legacy is predicated upon being evil. Peaches on Monday that have been harvested by about 30 local disease factories, also known as farms. Like, Fukushima City is a nuclear wasteland, and so is all the other prefectures around it. I'll give you an example, hang on. I'm really good at examples sometimes. All of these communities to your left should be abandoned. And then the second row of numbers to your, the third row, or the first row to your left is the cities. The next row is the population. The third row is a disposition radioactive fallout per square meter of soil of just gammas. And so keep your eye on that number, and then you can see all the communities to your left. All of these communities are nuclear wastelands. That's the very definition of a nuclear wasteland. All of them should be abandoned a long time ago. And so letting people live in that environment is cruel on a whole different level. Up to 70% will be shipped to Tokyo and surrounding areas and be relabeled so you don't know what it is. They just set off in, I think this is Iwaki City? Yeah, Iwaki. 354,000 people at 26,000 becquerels a square meter. They set off 40,000 fireworks. Everything's polluted anyway, why not, right? What's the big whoop? And you shouldn't be there, it's a nuclear wasteland. Concerns rise. Now, this is the first time I've seen this picture. You can't count the tanks, unfortunately. And so why did they put this? Is China. China put out this picture. And so that's the first wide-angle picture we've seen in months and months and months. I had a poll last night asking why don't they show us all the tanks? And when you're looking at this, you're seeing the same tanks as the poll. And look how bad the quality is. So I'll zoom in on it, try to give you some context. So when you zoom in on it, you can't count the tanks. You can't see the buildings, you barely notice the buildings. And that's not tanks in the left-hand side there. And so why put up a shitty picture like that all of a sudden, I wonder? Residents expressed their concern. And look who wrote the article. The scum of the earth, Mary Yamaguchi. All equipment needed for the release into the sea to treat it, the word treat it, is a despicable word. Experts comment on the release of the wastewater. And so the first thing you start seeing is treated. Look at all the treateds, right? And tritium. It's completely dishonest. It's an unbelievable dishonest thing to buy into that fake narrative. And look at the picture they showed. They showed a wide angle picture. You can actually see reactor 5 and 6. Let's zoom in on that. You can actually see reactor 5 and 6. Hang on. I screwed that up. Let me do this again. We'll get there. Just need a little bit of patience. That didn't work out how I want it. Wait, I'll back that up. We'll get there. I'll do this the hard way. So this is the first time we've seen this picture. So that's 2 pictures. Hang on, Dana. Stop freaking around. Have I got a better picture of that, Dana, or something? There you go. And what are they burning there? See the smoke in your left-hand bottom corner? They got 2 incinerators on this site, by the way. One brand new one they built a couple of years ago. Still not 1,000 tanks. That's quite interesting that they released these 2 pictures that I showed you today. After all these months of just the one picture, everybody's using the exact same picture. Democratic Party in South Korea, lawmakers railroad a resolution on Fukushima water release from the ruling party. Because the current administration that's in South Korea is vehemently pro-nuclear, whereas the previous administration, which was the Democratic, were anti-nuclear. They were shutting down everything. They stopped the building of reactors. They stopped the exporting of the reactors, and et cetera, et cetera. And then the new party, the first thing they done when they were elected was the president of South Korea went straight to a nuclear power plant and had his picture taken. The very first day, folks. Members of the Liberal Democratic Party of the Assembly Oceans Fisheries Committee unilaterally passed Tuesday a resolution opposed the Japanese plan to release the treated. Using the word treated is so dishonest. Radioactive water into the sea. The water is already into the sea. They can't contain it. Shit, man. They're blocking my channel too. Wow. Yeah, because that's a pretty touchy subject, the poll tonight. Thanks, James. It always sucks, though, when you got the proof, right? But at least you know, you're better when you know the truth than you are when you don't, right? I'm still shocked that Kevin couldn't comment on my site. That frightens the shit out of me. Should Tritium-3H, which is the man-made stuff, be banned from exercise nuclear weapons? And should americium-241 be banned from your smoke detectors? Because they're producing about 1 billion of them a year. Let me bring that back up. So it's saying now my bandwidth is only pumping out 799. And I have a gigabyte a second of bandwidth for fiber optics, which is fast for where we're on to, right? On fiber optics, so it should be consistent. And because we've been doing this for just seems like forever at this stage of my life, I'm pretty tuned into any discrepancies, right? And we started the video off with a tritium story that is just dynamite. That story is incredibly important. That information is just because tritium is thrown in people's faces as harmless, and now they're trying to use that as the dominant isotope. So it's super important because if you want to beat them at that game, that was the story to do it, right? Let's move past this story. They're independent. So they were talking about the South Korean nuclear scientists went down there, but they didn't get any samples of their own. The team did not collect a sample of the treated water on site. How come? Equipment ready to release the treated Fukushima plant wastewater. Treated. They use treated in title. Treated. And then treated again. This is a systematic brainwashing when you do stuff like that. You can't quantify the word treat. Like, if it worked, then everybody would have a fucking help system. You know what I mean? Well, and they don't. Japan has sought support from the international scumbags, the degenerate UNIAEA. And how can you have legitimacy from a monster? It'd be like asking Ted Bundy to verify that you're a good person. As Japan prepares to, well, Ted Bundy is a good guy compared to the IAEA, and Ted ain't no good guy. When he was alive, the scumbag, the degenerate monster, he was probably, if he didn't do that, he would have been with the International Atomic Energy Agency anyway. As Japan prepares to release Fukushima wastewater, if I ever heard of wastewater, I get upset. Anxiety grows across South Korea, but that's artificial anxiety. They're doing that on purpose to promote the tritium fable. So they have to censor me in order for the tritium fable to work. And that's what they're doing, right? And so there's nothing I can do about it, the censorship itself, but I can have faith and run an educational program 5 days a week. And I never stop. I'd like to go out in a boat tomorrow. I'm thinking about if the weather holds up, I'll go out in a boat tomorrow. I got so many chores over the last couple of days, won't hurt me. We didn't have ideal weather for it on the ocean. And I must admit, all those days on the ocean, we got 9 days punched in now. Everything in my body was hurting. Feeling a bit better now. I need an electric, like if I want to do all summer, if I'm going to do this all summer, and that's what the plan is, I got to get electric jack and I got to get electric winch for the boat. I can't afford to put the money in that direction quite yet, but I got to eventually, in the next 3 or 4 weeks, acquire that, get it installed, because that kills me. Using the jack kills me, because the one I got is really old and is scary as shit. And then the winch is the original winch that's on it. And I'm just not healthy enough to do that, right? And the winches are not that expensive. $150-$60 right here, you can get a winch will do the job. And $200 you can get a jack stand that'll do the job, right? So we'll get it. But that'll change the game, right? I got to fix. We got problems with the truck. We got problems with the boat that we got to resolve. And I had the truck back up on the ramps 2 days ago. Or was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. The skid plate for the tank, because we replaced the sending unit in the tank, of the fuel tank, right? the day before I had heart attacks. And I'm hearing noises underneath. I got under there, and there's only one bolt was left holding it up. And the skid plate is steel, and one bolt was not screwed in properly, so it couldn't grab, and the other bolt is cracked off, and the one that was left was halfway out. Those bolts should never back off. They're put in by torque, right? And so I found a couple of bolts and got it bolted back into place. So that was the problem that I didn't. That could have been a real friggin' disaster. And the same people, that's the same garage. The last time I was there before that, we had, what was it? They had to take the skid plate off to do, what the hell was it? Oh, we had to do the exhaust, right? And so they took the skid plate off, and when they put that on, the bolts fell out of that. And when I heard it, one bolt was just barely hanging on. That's the same bunch. And so my feeling was they'd done it on purpose. And I don't know why. I didn't do nothing to them. Then so to begin SOEC demonstration at High Rose plant to produce and use green hydrogen for manufacturing. I thought that was a nuclear plant they were talking about, but I typed in nuclear and it didn't show up, and I moved on. But it turns out there was another story where nuclear was doing it. Hydrogen's the way of the future, right? Because there's water left over. How can you beat that? But using it in making hydrogen from nuclear and calling it green is dishonest on a whole different scale. Feds want at least 5 years in jail for former Ohio GOP leader who threatened to blow up informant's house because of the nuclear scandal. Remember that with a householder? Well, the lobbyists threatened to blow up the informant's house. That's how vicious these people are. Matt Borges. And he suggested he should only get 1 year in jail instead of 5 or 10 or 15. He should get a life in jail for what they done. Trudeau killed this is Canadian, Trudeau killed the Bay of Fundy tidal power project. So this tidal plant actually was going to make 8 megawatts, enough to power 8,000 homes right there. And the Bay of Fundy got a 50-foot tide exchange every 5 hours. So, and I dove that bay. I gave up on it because you went down, and when you come back up, you were a mile down the coastline. Right? And so when we were doing food harvesting commercially, and you were like a fighter jet, which is unbelievable dangerous as a diver, right? It's so difficult to control your altitude or your depth. You could easily get to bends. And so what I was doing, I would go down, look for rock croppings, and then I would dive, like, because you're like literally like Superman. You're flying along this massive current, and then I would just like curve my body, and you would jack down and you land on your feet behind a bunch of boulders, and that's where you would work. And then when you try to come up, it was like coming up in a hurricane. And the diver, when they're following your bubbles, or the tender's following your bubbles, but your bubbles are coming up 300 feet or so behind you. I never seen nothing like it. The first North American tidal power project is dead. Trudeau Liberals killed it. The government in Canada is so pro-nuclear, they don't want any competition, period. And right where there, too, is Point Lepreau nuclear power plant, which is 14,400,000 trillion becquerels a year released of the tritium. It's so evil, it's hard to comprehend that this has been going on this long. It's hard to comprehend that people could be that evil to do something like that. It really is. The significance of what they're doing is absurdly But anyway, this 9 megawatts, 9,000 homes for that little operation. So they could have powered the whole coastline if they wanted to. And then last year, the Ontario government, where all the nuclear power plants were to, throttled 750 wind and solar farms that had $4.5 billion allocated to the renewable industry for storage. And so they throttled the 750 wind and solar farms last year in Canada, and they gave the money for storage and for the renewable industry, which would have proved proof of concept. They took the money, $4.5 billion, and gave it to Bruce Power, nuclear power plants, and they're going to build storage for a nuclear power plant that don't need storage. Like, there's no reason we can't have a future with this disgusting, despicable nuclear industry on our planet. You can't have a future. And they're saying these tidal energy project eventually would have generated 2,500 megawatts. Right, so you're talking holy shit amount of energy. We got one more story. When the federal government showed itself to be utterly uninterested in any kind of innovation because it competes with nuclear. Ultra-Safe Nuclear Corporation, and I've had contact with them over the years. These are despicable, disgusting scumbags. They call me on the phone quite a lot over the years. These are disgusting maggots. They're claiming they're going to build a micro-reactor factory in Alabama. And they're claiming that the factory will be highly automated, which will manufacture, assemble, and test and inspect the reactors that they're building, folks. Do you really believe this at all? Does anybody actually believe this nonsense? I doubt if anybody that's been here regularly will believe anything those crazies tell you. So how did we do tonight? We're going to close down the poll in a bit here. That's the end of the show, I guess. 11:53, so it's at 7 minutes to midnight. Okay, so good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night, which is Wednesday night. We've been on a good run lately. Haven't missed a show. We're getting lots of work in. My Jesus, ridiculous. So the poll tonight was, should Tritium 3H be banned from exercise and nuclear weapons, and consider starting petitions to ban 241 americium from smoke detectors. And I seen Charlie came by and voted no. Calm down, Charlie, I should say. We fixed him good, didn't we, the last time he called in? He's probably afraid to use the phone right now after the beat we gave him. Okay, so that's it for the show. Great. That first story tonight, there's quite a few great stories tonight, but that first one, that's really special story. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Charlie will never call back, yeah? Okay, hugs for everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. It never stops around here, so. Yeah, we got amazing stories tonight. I'm super happy with the stories. That Tritium story, though, we're going to have to cover that a few times over the next few weeks. I'll I'll crunch it down to something more, because that's a long story, so much information. We don't want to lose context of that. I'm going to order in that book, because that's a real book, that one. I need that one. And Kevin Blanche couldn't even leave comments on my video tonight. That is absolutely unbelievable that the industry is doing that. Alrighty, we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on the other side. Thank you for finding the time, the energy, and the effort. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Pretty dismal on the thumbs up tonight. And it is what it is. It ain't gonna stop us. We're still gonna keep going hard. The truth will prevail. And I already see the carnage in the nuclear industry. And if you can think about it, or if you can do it, don't forget to donate to Kevin, folks. Have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care.